Over the next two short tutorials, we're going to take a look at combining Forest Pack and RailClone to create a common feature of modern gardens, the raised bed. In the first tutorial, we'll use RailClone to create the wooden bed using a simple spline to define the footprint. In the second tutorial, we're going to use the same spline with Forest Pack to add all the planting. We'll be using the Bushes and Flowers collection from the 3D garden for this. It contains 41 species of common small decorative garden plant, each in 4 variations for a total of over 180 plants, and there are even additional presets and grasses. Before we get to the plants, let's take a look at the geometry for RailClone. It's actually pretty straightforward, just 3 boxes and a plane for the bed. We need 1 box for the horizontal planks, 1 for the vertical stakes, and a third that will add a cap to the top. Finally, a plane is used with a noise modifier for the soil. Either make it large enough so that it will cover your biggest flower bed, or make sure that it tiles if it repeats. The materials are equally simple. The shader starts with a simple free PBR wood material. From this we'll create a multi-sub-object material and wire this existing material to input 1. In this scene we're going to use RailClone to automatically box map the objects using real world map sizes and then randomise the UVWs for variation. Because of this we need 2 versions of the wood shader. The existing one with the boards running vertically and a copy in which the maps have been rotated by 90 degrees. And then this one will be wired to Material ID 2. Apply this material to the source objects and check the alignment of the textures. If necessary, you might need to edit the material IDs on the geometry so that the boards are running in the correct direction. Remember we have vertical boards on Material ID 1 and horizontal boards on Material ID 2. Once that's done, the last thing is to add a soil material, which we already have here, and wire this to Material ID 3 for the mud. And that's it. Both RailClone and Forest Pack are going to use the same spline, and to build the style we'll just use a simple rectangle. But you're not limited to these basic shapes, the beds can be more or less any shape you like. And so now with our geometry and paths prepared, it's time to jump in and create the style. So add a new RailClone object. Open the material browser and apply the material we just created to the RailClone object. Remember this isn't automatic. Go to the Modify panel and open the Style Editor. In many tutorials I keep repeating this kind of maxim that to make things easier you should split your style across multiple generators. This is another example of that approach. In this case we're going to use 3 generators. We're going to use 1 just for the planks, 1 just for the stakes, and a third one to add the soil on top as a kind of lid. So we'll start with the boards. Create a new A2S generator. Create a spline node and wire it to the generator's spline input. Select the closed spline from the scene. Right click on the generator and export Y size and X evenly distance. Then add 2 new numeric nodes. Change the type to scene units and then wire them to the newly exported properties. You'll now be able to edit these values from the Modify panel. Create a new segment node and select the plank geometry from the scene. Wire it to the default input. In the segment node settings, enable Apply Box Mapping and Real World Map Size to automatically UVW map the geometry. For this to work in Corona or another renderer that isn't supported natively, you'll need to disable the instancing engine in the display rollout. Increase the Y size and you'll see that the array is lying flat on the XY plane. To rotate it to be vertical, change the generator's X rotation to 90 degrees. Next we'll just add a little top padding to the segment to create a gap between the boards. And then to change the way that this default segment is distributed along the spline, go to the generator's default segment settings. By default you'll see it set to tile, which repeats the boards along the spline. Instead we want to change the mode to scale And in this case, a single segment is now scaled between the corners and or the evenly segments if they're wired in. Now create a new segment node, but this time don't pick any geometry and wire it to the X evenly input. You'll see now the boards are divided at regular intervals, which can be adjusted from the modify panel. This is done so that the materials in each section between the stakes can be randomized separately for a little bit more variety. Now let's add a cap to top this off. Create a new segment node and pick the cap geometry from the scene. Wire the cap to the generator's top input. Select the cap segment and change the Y alignment to bottom. The Y size measurement is now to the bottom of this cap geometry. And then finally, to stop the cap from being divided by the evenly segments, go to the generator's X evenly settings and uncheck extend to size. While we're here, let's enable adaptive to so that all the bays are an equal size. Okay, all good so far. Now let's add stakes in a separate generator. So select the existing generator and copy and paste to create a new one. Remove all inputs except the spline and the parameters. Create a new segment node and select the stake geometry from the scene. Turn on automatic box mapping and real world map size, and then wire the segment to the X evenly and corner inputs. You will now have a stake on the corners of the spline, and at each place the planks are divided. However, you'll be able to see they intersect the boards instead of appearing in front of them. And to fix this, we will offset the entire array. So rather than hard code this offset value, it's better to automatically read it from the width of the plank geometry, or the height in this case since we've rotated the array. That way you can change the geometry easily at a later date and the style will update automatically. So to export the plank size, right click on the segment node and choose Export Attributes Z Size. Right click on the new generator and choose Export Parameters General Y Offset, and then simply connect the two new exposed slots together. The array is now offset the thickness of the plank, but as you can see it's in the wrong direction. So to reverse this number, we need to multiply it by a -1. Now you can do this with an arithmetic node and a constant node set to -1 with the mode of course set to multiply. Or alternatively, there is a macro called negate value which is especially for this purpose. All you need to do is connect it to the middle of the wire. Just a note here, in older versions of RailClone there's a small glitch where some evenly segments might disappear when the array is offset. To fix this, if it occurs, change the Y mode to free and enable simple Y offset mode from the style rollout. This has been fixed in later versions. Nearly there, now we'll add the soil. So just create a new A2S generator. This time we're going to use a different approach. RailClone can fill a closed spline with geometry. To enable this mode, go to the generator settings and turn on extend XY size to area. Attach the existing spline node to the generator's clipping spline input. And then create a new segment node and select the soil geometry from the scene. Wire this segment to the default input. Now you can see already the soil is now filling the area, but it's too low. It needs to be raised to the top of the bed. And to do this, we'll export the generator's Z offset property and wire it to the existing Y size numeric node. And if you like, you can always adjust the height slightly from this point using the segment's local Z fixed translation parameter. So finally, we'll randomize the materials. At present, the material repetition is quite obvious. We can fix that by randomizing the offset of the UVs and adding some tint using RailClone Color. So wire a UVWX4 modifier between the wood segments. Go to the Random tab and in its settings enable offset. Enter a value of something like -1000 centimeters to 1000 centimeters for the U and V axes. You could also add a little tile variation while you're here too, if you like. Now let's randomize the textures. So open the material editor, add a RailClone color material to the wood's diffuse maps. Enable tint. Change the gradient settings so that it's white on one end and grey at the other. And then finally, change the mode to multiply. Then each time the segment is used, its brightness will be slightly randomized. And with that done, the RailClone raised bed is complete. You should now be able to easily change the size of the bed by adjusting the spline, or create multiple beds by simply attaching or adding additional splines. Once this is set up, you shouldn't ever need to model another raised bed again. And don't forget, we didn't hard code any values here, so it's easy to change the size of the source geometry or even swap it out for a different model. In the next tutorial, we'll add the plants and flowers to the tops of these beds with Forest Pack, reusing the same spline so that the whole system is parametric and easy to update.